afternoon, Key Biscayne. My name is Andrea Aga. I'm the village manager. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We have with us Mayor Davey. Thank you for joining, and Vice Mayor Moss, as well as staff members, including Roland Samimi, our Chief Resilience Officer, Javier Ray Brooks from the Public Works Department, Jake Oziman, our Public Works Director and BCP Director, Ms. Heidi Serra, the attorney who's been working with us on developing this the ordinance that we're going to be reviewing tonight, Ms. Gabby Rodriguez from our communications office, and we thank you all for being here. So without further ado, I will go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to our town hall meeting on July 21st, 2020, 5:30 p.m. And our objective this evening, we have about an hour blocked to be together this evening. We want to hold the village to a higher maintenance standard. So that was really the impetus. And what we want to kind of briefly go over is where we are today and where we are headed with regard to solid waste. I want to recognize that as a village, there are the stakeholders that we're kind of focusing on. We have our elected body, our council, the work that staff can do, the work that our vendors can do, and then the role of the residents in the work that we're trying to do here with regard to our solid waste. So the council will set the level of service through the budget appropriation, the funding of our solid waste service delivery. And I wanted to point that out because the purpose of this evening's workshop is to focus on a new ordinance that is coming before you, which is also something that the council establishes. And that regulation, that ordinance will become a part of our code, which would apply to all residents to adhere to. So this evening, what we wanted to do was share with the community what the new ordinance is going to call for and what it looks like, and take any questions that you have. On the staff side, of course, we want to provide excellent customer service. We want to hold our vendor accountable, and we want to educate and inform the community on new regulations that are in place that impact you. And we want to properly enforce the code. So this evening, we're going to be going over the solid waste ordinance, which does give code enforcement some ability to help enforce these regulations that will ultimately preserve your property values and improve the aesthetics in your neighborhood is our goal. So we also want our vendor to have excellent service delivery. They are partially responsible for the education and information that our residents get. We need them to adhere to the contract and also to comply with the code. So some of the elements of the ordinance this evening that you will see will impact the current vendor. And finally, the residents. So we want the residents to be informed. We want you to be engaged in the process. We want you to voice your concerns and ultimately to be able to comply with the code. And part of your ability to comply with the code is for us to inform you and educate you and take in your feedback and be responsive when you have issues. So basically where we are headed moving forward with the solid waste ordinance, we received a directive from council to go ahead and amend the ordinance. We did a survey with our residents to get a better sense of what kind of service you're looking for with regard to solid waste. If you're looking for curbside or side of home, if that's working for you, if not, if there are any challenges you have in being able to bring out your bins. And if you do, in fact, and we had about 10% of the survey results shared with us that folks did have some challenges to bringing out their own bins, which is why we have the ability to provide that white glove service and pick up the bins for you. This evening is part of our engagement to make sure that folks are aware of what the ordinance does. And finally, we're going to be amending the regulatory standards. And so we want you to know what those standards are. So I am going to turn it over to Mr. Javier Ray Brooks, and our Engineer 1 in Public Works. And at this point, he is going to share his screen and walk through a little bit of the background of the ordinance. We're going to go through some case studies that illustrate and some pictures of what we were experiencing throughout the island and how the proposed ordinance amendments will address those issues. And then at the end of the presentation, we will open it up to Q&A. So with that, Mr. Ray Brooks, please take it away.
Hello, I'm Javier Ray Brooks. Some of you may know me as as one of the people you call when you have an issue with your service. And I'm going to be running down some of the things that we're looking to in our new solid waste ordinance that's going forward, and give you a bit of the background, case studies, as Andrea said. All right. So a bit of the background: during the June 9th meeting, the Village Council directed staff to amend the village code regulating the maintenance standards, placement of solid waste and recycling containers, and bulk trash piles. The Village Council approved that ordinance at first reading, first public hearing, and it will be presented again for a second public hearing on July 28th. And in short, this ordinance is looking to govern the hours that bins and bulk trash piles can be placed in the right-of-way in advance of pickup, establish a requirement for bins to be screened from right-of-way, and set penalties for failing to meet these standards. Now, in talking about the restriction of hours, we are looking to set a restriction that solid waste and recycled material, or bins, can be placed within the right-of-way no earlier than 24 hours before an authorized scheduled pickup, and that they can only be placed if they are the correct type of collection to go out. Additionally, the solid waste and recycling containers must be removed by the same day of their collection. And finally, that bulk waste piles can be placed no earlier than 72 hours before an authorized schedule. And once we come to the end of these new regulations, I'm going to tell you briefly how they affect our current condition. Moving forward, we're looking to change the placement of the containers so that recycling containers, solid waste containers, and bulk waste piles would be restricted to being placed only within the responsible party's adjacent right-of-way, meaning that property owners would no longer suffer from having other individuals place waste within their adjacent right-of-way, and there is now an enforceable action to take against that. And that bins themselves should be stored on the property, screened from view. This can either be done through walls, fences, landscaping, or they could also be stored in the rear of a carport or in an enclosed garage on the premises. And finally, the enhancement to the enforcement would be to provide code compliance officers the discretion to establish the appropriate corrective action period in order to deal with the situation, removing the minimum 10 calendar day for correction and compliance, and to authorize them for when it is appropriate to provide a warning for a violation. Now, to go over a couple of cases, example cases. So in this case here, you can see that the bins are clearly visible from the right-of-way. Our intent is to have it so that when they are not due for collection, bins like this would not be seen. As we can see here, they are visually obscured through landscaping. They are tucked away to the side so that when you're passing by, you would less likely be able to notice them and they would not impact the aesthetic value of our community. Additionally, we would like to have these bins no longer permanently stored within the right of way, which would create the same benefit that we would see in the example shown here. Finally, the issue of bulk trash piles. The benefits that this ordinance is going to have on these is immense, because currently the minimum 10-day period that we see, I apologize. Let's start with the example stated as the bulk trash pile placed on a neighbor's right of way. This is an issue that impacts a number of our residents where the landscaper or another individual is placing bulk trash within your right of way, within your adjacent right of way that you're responsible for, and it's generating this pile that you would receive a citation for that rightfully shouldn't go to you. So we are looking to resolve this issue by making the responsible party who generated that bulk be the ones who have to deal with it at the end. And now going back to, I apologize, I had mislabeled my examples and that is on me. But now stating the previous example I was bringing up of the minimum 10-day period and how it affects bulk piles significantly is that with the minimum 10-day corrective compliance period, our code enforcement officers could only currently issue a citation, and typically the pile is not put out more than a week before it's supposed to have been put out. So that pile would be sitting there and then collected before the 10-day period, meaning that there is no fine or violation or penalty to the party who put out their pile well before they should have, besides the warning that goes before them. And our goal is to be able to issue a warning if it is your first time, but then be able to immediately come the next time and say, we've spoken with you before. We are hoping to correct this. We were hoping to correct this issue, but if you're going to be a repeat violator, we can now go with a fine with a shorter corrective period. And now I'm going to open it up for questions. Thank you.
All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you wish to ask any questions or speak to this topic, please press *9 on your telephones now.
I have a question. So 72 hours, what I'm worried about is that our right-of-ways tend to get damaged by having these large piles with the bulk waste. And what happens is that whatever grass or vegetation that we had there that was living ends up becoming very damaged and starts to die out, and it becomes mud and people park on top of it and it becomes issues. Do you think 72 hours is too long to have a pile there? Has anybody looked into how long that we can have a pile on our swales before it creates permanent damage? And then if there is damage there, how often are we going to go around to make sure that they're being repaired so, you know, the beautification of the village looks good? So I think that's the only thing that I see a little bit of a worry. I'm not sure if 72 hours is too long or not, or it's okay, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Javier, this is Heidi.
Yeah.
Do you want to address Vice Mayor Moss's point? I think at first reading, the language that we had proposed for bulky waste was no earlier than 48 hours. And I believe the request was that for second reading, we bring it back with no earlier than 72 hours before an authorized scheduled collection. So I think that's where the question may be coming from.
Yes, that was the ask that was made during the first reading. And as to the effects on the grass beneath it, there are more factors that go into it than just the time. There's also the weather conditions, which can also affect the condition of the grass while a pile is on top of it. So unfortunately, we can't give a precise, an additional 24 hours is measurably impactfully different than 48 hours.
So I can chime in. So Vice Mayor Moss, what we can do is we can do a little bit more field research and some benchmarking to see what the swale grass tolerance is. And if we find that 72 hours is potentially detrimental to the swale grass, then we can advise council accordingly on the July 28th meeting. And then to the second part of the question with regard to what the village would do. So typically the village does not place sod in the swales adjacent to single family homes. It's the property owner's responsibility to maintain those swales. And I think part of the challenge that we've had in which is why we're moving forward with this ordinance is because of the impact of the swales when you have piles that stand there for up to 10 days, which is I think what the code previously provided for was definitely more detrimental. But we will look at some benchmarking and we'll provide some feedback at the meeting for second reading on the 28th.
Yeah, thank you. And I understand that, Councilmember London, I think, brought up the 72 hours because, I understand the difficulty of landscapers and they all can't be there on 1 or 2 days before. They need a couple more days. So I understand that. And thank you very much. I think that would be good to just study it and just see if is the right number, just in case. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a caller that's raised their hand. Phone number ending in 133. Caller, please state your name.
Yeah, hi. This is Gregory Han, and I have some concerns about folks who have planted big hedges within 3 feet of the road edge, and there's three within a block of my house. And in one case, a person put out not a huge amount, but a reasonable amount of pickup, and it was into the roadway because there's no space. So I don't know if this is a separate consideration. Javier, I've spoken to you about this before. People end up parking their cars in the road because there's no space to park. It's a separate question. But what do you do when someone has no space on their swale to even put out a pile? Over.
So Javier, can you speak? Thank you for that question, sir. So 2 things. There's at least one street that I know that Javier has been thinking outside of the box and has some ideas on how to try to accommodate bulky waste and limited parking and compromised swales all at the same time. So I'm not sure if you live on one of those streets. But Javier, can you share with the community the different ways that vegetative and landscape debris can be picked up under the current program which sort of might help alleviate the larger piles, because there are a variety of ways that the village can pick up that debris. And if we leverage all of those ways, perhaps folks will find themselves with smaller bulky waste piles that might not then go into the roadway.
Yes. In addition to placing your yard waste and trimmings within your bulk pile, They can also be bagged or placed within a garbage bin and be collected with your regular solid waste collection.
Gregory Han again, Javier. If someone puts their waste out halfway into the road, you would come and ticket them for that?
If it shouldn't be in the roadway.
Well, these people don't seem to understand the community standards. So I've complained about this for over a year, but there's still cars out in the road and not that much bulky waste, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Just to a couple points. I don't think we could allow, well, thank you for letting us know and getting recording with the police department. Under no circumstances, we can't allow it to travel lane. So we have to remove the piling right away. So we'll look into it.
Thank you very much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you do have a question for the panel, just please press *9 on your phones. At this time, I don't see anyone else. No, there is one more. Phone number ending in 493. Caller, please state your name. 493. Caller, please state your name. Sir.
Cecile Sanchez.
Hey, Cecile.
260 Cypress Drive. I am thrilled that this conversation is going on. But I want results. Results and enforcement. We are community. We are tired of waiting for results. We need to educate our residents of our laws and then enforce it. Most of our yards, mine an exception, are done by service providers. If realtors manage properties, they should inform the tenants what rules they need to follow. Please, please help us out. We want to maintain our property values. We want our island to look nice and neat and be proud of it. You need to change probably the bulk rate pickup schedule. For example, my area on Cypress Drive, is usually on a Tuesday. So if you're giving 48 hours or 72 hours, what are you saying? Is it Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for pickup on Tuesday? Or can we coordinate and maybe both trash rates should be done on Wednesdays and Thursdays island-wide? But please, we need code enforcement. Thank you.
Bessie, I couldn't have said it better myself. We wholeheartedly agree, and I'm thankful that the council has acted on this, and you will absolutely, I think, see the difference once the ordinance goes in effect. Also, what we can do to help the realtors, I think that's a great idea to help educate people when they become a part of our community. So we can create some flyers that we can give to the realtors and to the Chamber of Commerce also, so that folks can have that material. And we'll take out perhaps an ad in the Islander and maybe some public service announcements that'll get the word out so that the residents are informed of what is expected of them. And then to your point with regard to the rate, so this is a service that the village provides. It's a fee for the service. So when we go out to bid for a new service provider, depending on the cost of the service and the level of service that the village elects to move forward with, that might impact the cost of the service to the residents. So as soon as we get to that step, when we bring a recommendation forward to council, if there are any adjustments needed to the fee that would be able to support the service level that we are striving for, we'll bring that to the attention of the council, and they'll be able to make the decision at that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any more callers at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do wish to speak to the panel, please press *9 now. Doesn't look like we have any more questions for the panel at the moment.
Oh,
I spoke too soon. There is one. All right. Phone number ending in 133. Caller, please state your name.
Yes, this is Gregory Hand back again. I was not able to see a copy of the first reading of the ordinance. I searched anywhere for a link on the various announcements. I even called fairly late in the day, called the clerk trying to get a copy of it so I could see what you were voting on. Just a Scribner's note here to say, please provide a link to what we're talking about. Over.
Message received. Message received. So if you are in front of a computer, if you go to the village's website, the June 30th meeting, if you go to the agenda, there's a copy of the ordinance there. If Pete, or if we got your name and we have your email address, we can also send you a link, and moving forward, that is a great idea. In anything that we put out, if it's specific to an ordinance, we will provide a link to the material for you to read that directly. Thank you.
Sir, if you would just go ahead and send your email address and small note to support@keybiscayne.fm.gov, and we'll send you that link right away.
Thank you, Pete.
All right, if anyone else wishes to speak to the panel or have any questions, please press *9 on your phones now. We have one caller ending in 864. Caller, please state your name.
Rose Haney, 472 Glen Ridge Road.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have a question. Right now, they pick up the garbage bins from the side of my house, and if you drive by the street, you know, and stop and look at my house, you'll be able to see it. So I think I don't have any trees out front to hide my garbage bin. So I'm assuming I'm going to have to put it in the backyard or behind my gate. Are they going to continue then to look for your bins when they don't see them from the street and take them out? That's my question.
Yes, to answer that question, it still would be the contractor's responsibility to go to your bins as long as they remain accessible. So if you were to put anything that would create that visual obstructions such as the wall, fence, or landscaping to where they are currently placed, or place them in another location where those conditions already exist. As long as they remain accessible, such as not behind a locked gate, it would still be their responsibility.
No, but they're okay. So they'll open if they don't see it, because I don't have any trees in my front yard to hide it behind. They're going to. So it sounds like I'm going to have to put them behind the gate, and the gate's not locked. So you think they're really going to open the gate and look for the bin and then take it out? I'm just wondering about that. You know, because that's a lot of work for them to be searching, and then having to open someone's gate.
They will. They are obligated to. If for any reason, ma'am, you find that they miss you, just give us a call or shoot us an email, and we'll make sure to flag your address and make sure the contractor is aware which side of the home the gate is on and where the bins are placed, so that they don't miss that.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we have the gentleman with the phone number ending in 133 raising his hand again. Sir, you are live.
Yes, just things keep coming up. The contractor often brings the bins comes to my front of my house, brings them out to the road and empties them. He never closes the top. Would you please tell the contractor to not be passive aggressive and just close the top so that it doesn't rain in there? Silly comment. Sorry.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry that's been your experience. That's definitely not fun to bring back a bin filled with water. So we will absolutely reiterate to the contractor what those standards are. And I would, to that point, sir, we have had performance issues as has been pointed out this evening and in prior discussions. And with the new vendor, we do anticipate there to be an improved level of service and coordination with the vendor. So thanks for bringing that to our attention, and we will definitely remind them.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you wish to ask any questions of the panel, please press *9 on your phones. At this time, I don't see anyone else with any questions.
I believe Councilmember Petros may have joined us as Katie's iPhone.
Yes,
okay, so welcome, Councilmember Petros.
Thank you, that's correct.
Thank you for joining us. Well, if there aren't any further questions, we can wrap this up. If anything does come to mind and you want to reach out, or if you have questions about the ordinance or where we are in our process with regard to getting a new vendor in place, or the solid waste collections, your bill, any other issues, any concerns you have about the service you're being provided, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're available and we are happy to serve you. And thank you for your time this evening. And thanks again to Mayor Davey, Vice Mayor Moss, and Councilmember Petros for joining us. Thank you and have a good evening.